Roget's Thesaurus. Oh, I remember these old books. Oh, yeah, my Bank of New Mexico. That was cool. The art book, box camera, pinhole camera. Bill Viola, he's pretty cool. Earl Morris, Speed Graphic Manual. Oh, these old New Yorker albums of cartoons. Oh, yeah, this, Gary Winogrand, David Hawkins. What? This is this a book? Book? This is no book. This is a typewriter. This is the MJ Rooy. Well, good day, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Well, you know, I've been going through my typewriter collection these last few months and not only paring down and deciding which machines are the favorite ones to use, but trying to get most of my, or all of my collection, if I can, as usable as possible. And deciding that if there are any machines in my collection that I don't really enjoy using that much, maybe I shouldn't really have them in my collection. But there's one particular machine that we haven't looked at in quite a while. And my friend Javier over in California has been writing me some letters and postcards asking me to cover this typewriter. And we've covered it in a previous episode, which I'll link down below. And it is the MJ Rooy, also known as the Roxy, and it is this little typewriter right here. That's right, this is the MJ Rooy in its folded up condition. Now, before we unfold it, let me show you a couple condition issues. The original feet that are on the bottom of the machine, I've replaced with some rubber padding pieces that are cut to the same shape. And these were epoxied on. And then secondly, a common problem with these is the handle. The original handle is a plastic, kind of an off-white colored plastic handle, and they just kind of disintegrate over the years. And since you're carrying the machine by the handle, it has to be rather secure. So I've, a few years ago when I first got this machine, I made a makeshift handle out of brass, a couple 90-degree angle pieces soldered to a brass tube and some hardware to hold it in place. So there is the MJ Rooy as far as folded up, and then you have this little latch that you slide to the side and you lift up, and then the whole typewriter flips around like that to make a usable typewriter with a storage compartment underneath. That's right, where I keep scraps of miscellaneous papers and backing sheets or whatever. So I've decided, you know, this again is part of the whole process of making my collection more usable, deciding which machines are usable and aren't, and so it's about time I re-examine the MJ Rooy. Stay tuned. Well, before we get into the details of the Rooy, we should talk about why you would want to carry or to take an ultra-portable typewriter with you. Well, obviously, owning an ultra-portable typewriter is mostly about the portability. You do want to take it places. So if you take this typewriter and you fold it back down, closed, you'll find that this typewriter doesn't come with a case. It has a carrying handle. It makes its own case, so to speak. And that begs the question of which is more portable, the Rooy in a folded condition or a similar typewriter, which would be the Groma Colibri. So I just happen to have the Colibri at this point. Now the Colibri, carrying it, it has a case like that. It's actually one of the nicer cases. But you can see, as far as weight, by the way, the Colibri is a little heavier with its case, but you can see the Colibri in its case is quite a bit thicker than the Rooy. And the footprints are very similar. So now, looking at it, the Colibri is only slightly thicker than the Rooy in its folded condition. Once you fold the Rooy open, you'll find the Colibri is definitely thinner than the Rooy in its deployed condition. So that's a matter of size. As I said, the Colibri is a little heavier in weight. A better question, if you're wanting to take a typewriter and actually using it, is how functional are these two machines as actual writing tools? And that's where there are some significant differences. One of the things about typewriter design that's kind of interesting is that the bigger the machine is, the more space the designer has to make the design of the type bar linkages more optimized for the ideal touch and operation. Whereas the smaller the typewriter, the less opportunity the engineer has to do that. And it's really challenging, I'm sure, to design a typewriter really thin and also one that has a fairly good touch. And I got to really say that the Colibri, I really love the balance between its compact size and its touch. It has a pretty darn good touch, especially this one now that I have added an extra spring or a spring into the universal bar. Didn't have an adjustable touch, and I've added a little bit more tension. It really feels good. Also, the Colibri has the articulating keycaps. I guess you call it articulating. The keycaps that stay flat throughout the entire stroke, like the 5 Series Smith Coronas do. Conversely, if you compare that to the Rooy or Roxy, these typewriters, the working mechanics of this typewriter is built into this thin section. So the whole bottom half is just like a holder. It's just the lid that instead of detaching, it just folds underneath. So a lot more compromise has gone into the design, or I should say there's less opportunity to make an optimal design for the type R linkages because there's so little room, right? So that's one of the problems with this design, and as a consequence, it just doesn't have a very good touch. Oh, I've probably felt worse typewriters, but not too worse. This is one of the poorer typewriters in terms of touch, but it is a portable typewriter, and that's one of the compromises you make when you do want to go typing out somewhere with a compact machine like this. Some of the other features on the Rooy also I don't like as much, like for instance the carriage return lever folds out. It's a very short lever. It reminds me very much of the early style Hermes rocket. It folds up like that. A short little lever that barely gives you any room, any leverage at all. And there's also only one carriage release button or lever on the right side instead of being like the Colibri has one on both sides, which is very nice. The fact that it uses a 7/16 wide ribbon instead of half-inch ribbon and extra small ribbon spools, very similar probably to the Hermes rocket, I guess. So a lot of compromises in this design. It's not a great feeling typewriter. This particular machine, though, this particular Rooy, has the problem of a very hard platen roller, and the platen roller itself is very small in diameter. It's smaller, I believe, than, yes, definitely smaller in diameter than the Colibri. So combining a very small diameter platen with a very hard platen means it doesn't feed paper all that well, and it has a really loud twanging sound to it as the type bars hit the platen, so it needs a good backing sheet, and it doesn't have all that great of an imprint. And I'll show you the imprint now, and then maybe I can find some way to mitigate that. Well, this MJ Rooy uses a 7/16 inch ribbon, and as you might be able to tell, the top edge of the ribbon is worn pretty badly. There is no bichrome setting, so you can only use the top edge of the ribbon. I could flip the ribbon around, but well, I have an assortment of ribbons, unlimited 7/16 inch ribbons. I have a purple, a blue, and an orange. I don't think I'm going to use the orange. It sounds like it'll be a little too light. I've used the blue before, but I haven't used the purple, and I think I'm going to try the purple here. So also, these spools are smaller than the standard size, so we're going to thread the new Ribbons Unlimited 7/16 inch ribbon onto the original metal spools for the Rooy. Well, let's wind the Rooy onto its end of the ribbon here. You notice these two little green knobs. You can reverse the direction manually by going like this. There's actually arrows on them. So you could call that a manual ribbon reverse, but it's two-fingered operation. And just looking at the old ribbon here, you might be able to see all the holes in the wear in the upper edge of it. That hard platen is definitely taking its toll on this ribbon. And what are we going to do with this old 7/16 inch ribbon, keeping in mind that half of it is worn out? Well, I'll probably just stick it in this baggie here. I'll type up a little card in there just to indicate that it's from the Rooy. It's a 7/16 inch, and maybe we'll put some WD-40 on it and try it out, see if I can rejuvenate it, at least half of the ribbon. Ribbons Unlimited, purple, 7/16, of course. universal size spools. I'm sure these are going to be dark and inky, so a good reason to be wearing gloves unless you really want purple ink all over your hands. Well, this is the Joe Van Cleve device. It's not really a speedy spooler in the sense of Bob Marshall's device, but maybe we'll just call it the slow spooler instead. So we just basically will turn it like this. Alright, get it started in there, in the hook. Seat it on the hook, get it started. And the eyelet is right there. Okay, you'll notice the way the ribbon turns. The ribbon feeds onto the front side of the spool, so make sure you put the ribbons on, the spools on, so that the ribbon feeds onto the front like that. There's a pin on this disc here that you have to engage in the slot in the spool, so make sure you do that. Through the reversing guide, around this outer guide, and on the other side we will try to get it onto the pin of this disc like that. Okay, now see if we can jam two type bars together, and then through the magic of using two tweezers, trying not to mangle the ribbon too badly. Okay. Well, it is darker for sure. Yeah, I like the imprint is not perfect, but it is darker. Yeah, you know, that is significantly better, I would say. Of course, I am using a backing sheet of construction paper. Last time I used this, I was actually using a sheet of plastic film, like polyethylene film, and using that as a backing sheet instead of the construction paper. And so I thought, hey, let's try that again. How does it perform? And we'll see here. So I think what I did last time is I started to feed the plastic film in first, and then I fed the paper in behind it. Let's get our margins set here. Something like that. It actually feeds the plastic film a little bit easier than it does the construction paper. The construction paper is kind of slippery somehow, more than the plastic is. It doesn't seem like that would be the case, but it is. And then I need to feed this underneath the paper bale. Okay. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Oh, that's better. And as you can see, maybe this last sentence here, it looks a little darker, a little better than before with the construction paper. So yeah, that plastic film, that I think it's like 4 mil thick, mils meaning 4/1000ths of an inch, does pretty good on this typewriter. So I don't want to be totally negative on the Rooy, but to find some benefits or positive attributes of it, let's look in the back of the machine behind the platen. So you have easy access to the on-feet and motion adjustments. So the lowercase adjustment is this set screw and nut right here, and the uppercase is this one right next to it. Very easy to get to adjust the on-feet and motion. So there's one positive. So another attribute that I like about this machine is, even though it's a carriage shift, it's a pivoting style carriage shift, similar to the Hermes Rocket. Instead of lifting the entire weight of the carriage, you're just pivoting it backwards. And that makes it a lighter touch. It's really not much heavier at all than a segment shift machine for that reason. Another feature that I think is rather interesting, I don't know if it's good or bad, the ribbon lift kind of works like an Olivetti style, but it's on both sides. So as you might recall on the Olivettis, like Olivetti letters and all that, they have a hinged pivoting arm on the right side that raises the vibrator up, and it sort of does it at a curved arc, kind of an angle. Well, this one is kind of doing the same thing, but there's an arm like that on both sides here, a pivot point on both sides. This typewriter also has a Bar Dampening Spring, this curved wire right here, similar to a lot of the Brother machines you see, and it sort of dampens the speed of the typewriter as it approaches the end of its stroke, so it's not so loud and clangy. This one on the right side, the end of the wire broke off and I had to shorten it and loop it around the screw, so you can see that this loop is a little shorter than that loop. Now we get to the type bar rest underneath the type slugs, and it's a piece of rubber. It's very hard, and as you might be able to hear, it contributes a lot to the noise of the machine. Let me move my microphone a little bit closer to this so you can perhaps hear it. Yeah, just the sound of it returning and hitting that type bar rest makes quite a bit of noise on its own. Okay, so as I look underneath the type slugs to look at the type bar rest, it looks like this material is really hard, and you can tell by the sound of it. I'd like to try to see if I can replace it. I have some of this adhesive craft foam. You know, you peel it off, and maybe I can peel this piece off and make a pattern for it and stick it down. So I first would like to raise up all of the type bars as much as I can and get them out of the way. How much video footage will I burn? Okay, thread this underneath it like that. This is one of those pieces of plastic coated clothesline wire. Okay, now if I can raise it up enough, hold it in place without mangling them too badly. Okay, maybe I can just peel this guy off. Oh yeah, there you go. Comes off in a couple pieces, but alrighty. Well, maybe that's enough to make a pattern out of. This thing had like 3 layers, it looks like. But I'm going to try to mark it, make an arc-shaped replacement for it here. Okay, scissors next. And we'll make it a little bit, maybe slightly wider than we need to. Because you can always trim it down, but it's harder to trim it up. Okay, I'm trying to dry fit this in here without pulling off the adhesive backing. Okay, looks like I need a second layer also, because it's hitting the metal rim. Well, okay, so I got 2 pieces here. I'm going to try to peel one off and stick it to the other. Now what I'll do is try to fit this onto the typewriter with this backing still on it, and just to make sure it fits before I peel it off and try to stick it for good. Okay, let's peel it off and start it. Start on one end and work our way to the other end. And try not to stick this stuff where it doesn't belong. This is where you need my third hand. With the third hand, you push it down while the other 2 hands are holding the rod, the wire. Alright, now let's try to cut this excess off, and we can gingerly take out this clothesline wire, put the ribbon back in the forked guide. Okay. Oh yeah, much better. One of the other things I don't really like about this machine is the paper release lever, which is on the right side here, this funky lever right in front. It's spring-loaded, but there's no detent to lock it into that position, meaning that if you have to adjust your paper position, you have to kind of hold this with one, and you can only adjust the paper one-handed with your other hand. You can't like lock it into the release position and then use both hands. And that's just a little bit of an inconvenience, but it is kind of an irritation. I believe the Roxy was sold in the United States with a QWERTY layout, but if you're not familiar with the AZERTY layout, you have 6 characters that are basically transposed. You have the M, which should be over here, but is up here instead, and then they have, on this one, the question mark and comma is up, which should be up here or even down here. But yeah, it's actually reversed even more, because on an American machine, semicolon and something up here, and then question mark comma would be here, M would be over here. This one has a shifted period, which is even more of an irritation. Anyways, and then the W and the Z, or the W and the Z, are reversed, and the A and the Q are reversed. So there's a lot going on. I find using, for instance, a QWERTY Z, a German keyboard, is a lot easier, because I only have to really worry about the Y. The Zs or the Zs aren't very common. So a QWERTY Z or QWERTY Z keyboard is pretty easy. But the AZERTY, you definitely have to be sort of, you know, two-fingered pecking and looking at the keyboard until you get used to it. Let's do some more typing and see how this machine performs after the little bit of things we've done. Not nearly as loud. Yes. Here's a good question. Should you go look for a MJ Rooy or a Roxy typewriter for your collection? That's a great question. Okay, if you're a practical typist, in other words, if you collect typewriters mainly to write with, and you want an ultra-portable typewriter, both the MJ Rooy, Roxy, and the Calibris are fairly rare. They're not as plentiful maybe in the United States as Smith Corona Skywriters, for instance. You're going to probably be equally pressed to find a good one in the United States. That being said, if you do find one, you'll probably find that the Calibri is in better shape, is a better machine. Even when they were brand new, the Calibri was a better typewriter. I think that kind of answers itself. If you're a practical typist, you would probably like the Calibri better than the Rooy or Roxy. But if you're a collector of typewriters, more so than a user of typewriters, you might very well find this to be a very interesting machine in your collection because of the way it folds up so thinly. And it's one of the few French-branded typewriters, right? We know the third generation Hermes 3000s were made in France, but this is actually a French design. Yeah, it's more of a collector's item kind of typewriter. And I've done my best here to try to fix it up to make it more usable. Certainly a fresh ribbon, Ribbons Unlimited, the purple ribbon I like, it certainly helps to have a good ribbon in these machines. You do need a 7/16 ribbon. But the big problem with this machine is, of course, the platen roller is so hard, and it could really badly use a new one. So typewriters like this have an intrinsic limitation based on their design. And you have to kind of accept that up front as part of the limitation of getting into it. But when you need a typewriter that'll really fit in a narrow space, and you absolutely have to write with a typewriter out somewhere, this might be one of the few solutions for you. I'd like to hear about your experience if you have or have used an MJ Rooy or Roxy typewriter. What are your impressions? So drop a note down below. Love to hear from you. And I always want to give you the ending admonition to stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.